Today on Periodic Perfection, we're going to be talking about hydrocarbons, specifically alkanes. Alkanes are a class of hydrocarbon. This means they contain only hydrogen and carbon that contain only single bonds between their carbon-carbon atoms. They are considered to be unsaturated because they only have single bonds between their carbon-carbon atoms. To determine the name of an alkane, you count the number of carbons, and that will tell you what prefix you use in order to designate the name. Just like a shape with 8 sides is an octahedron, a hydrocarbon with 8 carbons in it is an oct hydrocarbon. So if it's an alkane, meaning all of the carbon-carbon bonds are single bonds, that would be an octane. With that in mind, let's go ahead and do a little naming. Here we have an example hydrocarbon. First thing I look at is I look at my carbon to carbon bonds and I see that they are all single bonds. That means that I am definitely dealing with an alkane, which means my substance will end in the suffix ane because that means that we have all single bonds. Next thing I do is I count up my carbons. And if I look carefully, I find that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 carbons. So if I go back to table P, I look for the 6 carbons, number of carbon atoms puts me right there, and that means I am using the prefix hex, which means 6. I then come back, I already know my ending is ane, that means my name is hexane. This molecule is simply known as hexane. Let's do another one. Here I have another alkane. I know it's an alkane because all of the carbon-carbon bonds are all single bonds. That means my ending will be ane. I then count up my carbons, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I come back to table P, and I find this prefix that gives me 5, and that would be pent. So the name of this molecule would be pentane. Very straightforward. Now I'm going to just make it a little bit more complicated. We're going to talk what happens when we get a branch or a side chain. This would be a side chain. It is what we call a group that hangs off of the main chain. This is considered our main chain. It's the longest continual chain in the molecule. Anything that branches off of that is a side chain. Now, this particular side chain has only 1 carbon in it. So if we go back to table P, 1 carbon is meth. So we're going to need that prefix to tell us something about the structure of our molecule. So this part is going to get something about meth. Now, when we have a side chain, the side chain always gets the suffix -eel. This is part of the IUPAC system of naming. We then come in and we number up our carbons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I could have just as easily started numbering from this end instead of from the left. But the reason why I numbered from the right and not, or sorry, the reason why I numbered from the left is not and not the right is I want to give my side chain the address that gives me the lowest number. The only time you use numbers in naming is when you're telling a location. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbons. Everything is single bonds. That means I know I have ane because it's all my single bonds. I know that my prefix for the molecule will be pent because I still have 5 carbons, but I need to add in this eel group or side chain. So that's methyl. I need to tell where the methyl is attached. The methyl is attached on this number 2 carbon that comes into our name and it becomes 2-methyl pentane. Remember, this prefix means single carbon side chain. This tent means 5 carbon, and ane means alkane. It really is like learning a new language. And that's it for alkanes and branching alkanes.